Hi, everybody. My name's Jeff. I'm a SME and also a coach who works with people in the construction industry.
Hey everyone, I'm Rochelle. I'm a proposal management consultant in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
And this
is Burnout Banter. This month, we're going to talk about isolation and loneliness, how they can cause and prolong burnout, how we can overcome them, and why it's important to build a social network to combat them. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts so that you can stay up to date and get notified when new episodes drop. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So I don't know if you've heard of the book, The Happiness Track.
I haven't.
But it was released in 2017. It's about happiness at work. But while the authors were researching the book, they found that 50% of people reported being burnt out, which might sound a little bit low to us now in 2023, but this was 5 years ago, so we'll give them some leeway.
Yeah, disengagement's much higher than that, I think.
I think so. We've had a rough couple of years, so I think we're up to maybe 70-80%, I think is the new statistic.
Yeah.
More importantly, they found that there is a significant correlation between feeling lonely and work exhaustion. The more exhausted we are, the lonelier we feel, which would be interesting to do a follow-up study on that post-COVID, but I haven't found that one yet. So
yeah,
loneliness and isolation, they have serious side effects on individuals, impacting both our psychological and physical health. It's no joke. Being lonely is a scary thing. So research from the University of California, Irvine shows that while drinking reduces longevity by 30%, smoking by 50%, loneliness can reduce longevity by an astonishing 70%.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
me as humans, right? Part of being human is connection and being part of the tribe, right? when we were in when humans were first developing, or cavemen or whatever, right? If you got cast out of the tribe, it was like a death sentence.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a survival instinct that I think is ingrained into our DNA to band together and to find your like. I think, yeah, it's just a human tendency to pair off or to group up. It's not necessarily survival anymore, but it kind of is. If you think about that, like in terms of your health, it is survival to group up and have people who care about you and surround yourself with a positive network, because research from Carnegie Mellon University shows that strong social networks are associated with stronger immune systems and lower rates of anxiety and depression. So while we might not be like running away from tigers anymore, we are protecting ourselves from the modern day equivalent, like the scariness of, life. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to equate a tiger to something in the 2023 and it wasn't working. So today we're going to really be talking about loneliness and exploring this connection between burnout and isolation, as well as the importance of building community to both overcome and prevent burnout. And I thought it would be nice to start that with this kind of idea of you are not alone, because I think a lot of us, when we burn out, it's a very lonely feeling. We kind of struggle in silence. And we don't have to. I think that's one of the big things that burnout does, is it isolates us. And then we further isolate ourselves and we just exacerbate it. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's a big problem. I was even doing a workshop last week for a general contractor down in Arizona, and even just getting them, and they all work together on the same job site, but getting them into the same room talking about the same thing, it was pretty eye-opening to them that, wow, everybody feels this way. It's not just me.
Yes. Yeah. And I think giving people permission to talk about it is another big thing. Especially in proposals, there's this kind of taboo about talking about being burnt out or not being able to handle something, is what it comes across as. So you're almost seen as like the weak link if you say, I can't I can't do it anymore. I'm putting my foot down. And so I think we're often just afraid to admit weakness or afraid to admit that we can't keep up with our peers, which is ridiculous because some of our peers are in different places than we are, and we're not robots, right? Like we can't work at 100% productivity all the time. So if you need to say, I'm having a day, I'm going to be at like 50%, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And they could be struggling with similar things to you that you are, and you have no idea, or they could be struggling with other things that you might not be. But in some way or another, we're all we're all dealing with challenges on a daily basis. So
Exactly. Especially if the last 3 years have taught us nothing, it has to be that we are all dealing with something.
yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to start with saying, like, you are not alone. I get stories daily. I love to get on my little LinkedIn soapbox and talk about burning out and how proposal culture as it is contributes to that. And my inbox is just flooded every month with messages from people saying, like, oh my gosh, you could have been describing my job. I didn't know that it was like this in other places. Or, hey, that's where I was 20 years ago. It took me, having a difficult conversation or leaving or stepping out of the space to realize that that wasn't normal. It didn't have to be normal. So just know, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, it is enough, because again, you're not a robot. You don't have to be at 100%. I'm probably running on about 30% today, just based off of how much trouble you will not hear me having during this episode. And that's okay. It's just a day.
Yes.
You can be 100%
It's somewhat
tomorrow.
amusing to watch.
I'm bringing joy to Jeff today. That is my whole purpose for today. If I check that off my list, then I've done 100%. So yeah, you don't have to, and you don't have to burn out alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. So, Jeff, I know I've done it, but have you experienced loneliness in your career? Or
Yeah, definitely. I think anytime you take on a new role,
yeah,
there's some loneliness in that, right? Because you're trying to figure things out, that, you may have been great at your role before, but now there's these new things that you don't know what you're doing. And so there can be a real tendency to isolate with that. And maybe you don't want to admit that you don't know what you're doing. That
which is
certainly gets
okay.
me.
It's okay to say I don't know.
But yeah, I found myself lonely in that situation. I also think, when I got to the point of being a principal and I was in charge of an office, I didn't have any peers in the office. And so that was very lonely, right? Like you're used to being friends and peers with the people that you're now leading, and that relationship changed a little bit, and that did create some loneliness for me. So
Interesting.
yeah.
I didn't really think about it until you said that, but as a proposal person, there have been several times where I was the only proposal person in the office, the only marketing person. So I didn't have peers
Oh.
that knew what I did, at least. Like I had colleagues that were great. I had other, like director level, but none of them knew what I did. So like trying to talk to them about it just didn't, they weren't the tribe that I needed. They weren't the connections that I needed.
Yeah.
I
And there were
think.
certain things that I needed to talk to somebody about, but I couldn't talk to my staff about them either.
Right. Right. Which is where this, social connectivity and having the right social connections around you comes into play. Because I don't know about you, but I've had the manager that complains to me and probably shouldn't have. And there's a disconnect there. Or being the manager that's complaining to the wrong person. I've probably done that. I apologize to whoever you were. Sorry in retrospect.
Well, I did it too, right? Because I didn't know any better at the
Mhm.
time. I didn't feel like I had a community that I could go to that would hear me. And so in needing to be heard, I went to my staff because they had to listen to me. And I'm not saying I was proud of that, or I am proud of that, but that's what I did because I didn't know any better. So that's how important community is. If you don't have it where you need it, you'll find it in places where maybe it's not best to have it.
And we learn. If
And we
there's
learn.
anything we talk about on this podcast, it's practicing and learning and sometimes making mistakes, which is also okay. Maybe that was a 40% day where you just weren't quite thinking through things the way that you needed to be.
Or
Which is
40% 9 months.
oh no. Oof. It happens. It
It
happens.
does.
We're humans, not
Yep.
robots. And, loneliness is not necessarily the result of isolation, right? It can also stem from emotional exhaustion from workplace burnout, which I think I identify with a little bit more. I know I see this frequently on LinkedIn, especially, we just kind of came out of the holidays, where you're around these people 8 hours a day or more if you work late. You have meetings with them, you're on the phone with them, you're emailing with them back and forth, you're constantly in contact, and then someone wants to do happy hour, or you have a team building exercise, or you have a holiday party, or whatever it is, and it's just too much to go out with your coworkers. I almost never participated in any sort of happy hour or after work get together with any of my coworkers or anything outside of the office because it was just overwhelming to me. Not that I didn't like them. I've had great coworkers in the past, but I'm a very introverted, charge my batteries not in isolation, charge my batteries on my own and then go back out. So to go out and be in the office and then go out on top of that and be social again was too much. And then that caused tensions it made me feel lonely because my coworkers who could do that advanced faster than I did. And I kind of fell behind. So what do you think of the emotional
Yeah.
exhaustion, isolation concept?
Yeah. I mean, isolation is a fear response. So when we're isolating, we're doing it so that we protect ourselves, or we're trying to protect ourselves in isolating. So yeah, that's a very real thing. And especially for introverts where we do recharge on our own. You and I have joked about being at conferences, and after 3 days, we can be social, but we're very tired at the end of
Yes.
the 3 days and need some downtime. Whereas other people, that 3 days with other people really lifts them up, the extroverted people. So, yeah, I think it's a very real thing. And we're doing that to protect ourselves. So,
Exactly. And I think that kind of imbalance, not to pit extroverts and introverts against each other, but maybe not always understanding, or again, because we don't always communicate our needs very well as humans. And we like to compare ourselves to others and kind of pedestal certain types of people and their energies. It's okay to say, I can't do this.
yeah. Yeah, and I think there is a big misunderstanding of introversion and extroversion too, that introverts aren't social.
We
Um,
are.
we are, yeah. Yeah. And it just wears us out. And
Yes.
that extroverts don't like to be alone. They do. It's just they get energy from being around other people.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't need to be alone to recharge the way that introverts do, and introverts don't need to be around other people to recharge. It's just kind of opposite
Yeah.
batteries.
Yeah. And one thing, this is a little off topic, but in regards to your story of not wanting to go to the happy hour, you can also negotiate with yourself, right? Like, I'm only going to go for 30 minutes. And
Ooh.
then if I'm having a good time, I can renegotiate. Or if I'm having a miserable time, then I can leave, right? You've given yourself an out, and it takes all the pressure off of how long am I going to be there, how it's going to wear me out even more. So that can be a great way to navigate that. And you never know, you might have a great time and stay longer.
That's true. That's true. I did that recently. I got invited to a thing and I was like, I adore all of you. I would love to go to this thing. I don't think I can. And I did. And I had a great time. I ended up staying the whole time. So it
Yeah,
was
but it's
great.
nice to give ourselves an out, right? Like, okay, I'll go for
Yes.
30 minutes and see if I like it or if I'm having a fun time.
Yeah. Sometimes if you get to that burnout point, though, just the thought of doing anything extra on top of your day is
Oh, yeah.
too much. And that brings me to this next really interesting point as part of that study was that loneliness registers as physical pain in the brain. I did not know that. And then I thought about it. and it makes sense. And
Yeah.
that physical pain, that feeling of loneliness impacts your work productivity and encourages disengagement from the pain. Like you said, we are protecting ourselves, right? Fear response. And that just starts the vicious burnout cycle. We've disengaged, we're starting to isolate, but we are isolating, and that's causing further problems. And so we just kind of start spiraling, right?
Yeah, which is interesting. If you look at what causes burnout, it's a lack of rest.
Right.
And so, in order to get over burnout, we have to give ourselves rest, which is going to isolate us potentially.
Right. Next point, though. Uh, actually, that's a great segue into my next thought point, whatever is happening up in my brain here. 40% day, guys, 30 maybe. We talk about burnout for individuals, right? But if 80% of us are saying that we are burnt out, should we be talking about burnout as a collective, right? Should we not be pointing at an individual and saying, like, you need to step back and rest? Should we be looking at this as like, oh my gosh, 80% of my staff is burnt out. We should implement programs, or we should address this collectively. Maybe it's not an individual problem anymore.
I definitely don't think it's an individual problem if it's impacting so many of us. But
Agreed.
there is a huge cultural difference between Americans and the rest of the world too when it comes to that idea. I think it's a much more challenging thing to tackle here than it might be in other places.
I agree. I to give you a small insight into my personality that I don't know if I want to give everybody, but I'm going to anyway. I enjoy Emily in Paris, the Netflix show, which is just a train wreck of awful, but it's great anyway. And there's a point where she's from Chicago, she's in Paris, and she's trying to work. She's like talking to one of her coworkers or sending an email or gives them a phone call on the weekend. And they tell her it is literally illegal to do this. Like, don't do this. And she thinks they're joking, and they're not. I'm like, can we do that here? That would be, how did they figure that out? And we, like, what did we do wrong that we think it's like okay to, not even okay, but like it's something to strive for, to say, I've put in 4, midnight hours, and I've worked the last 3 weekends to get this thing done, and it's great. But like, what have you sacrificed to do that? And what did you get in return? Like,
Yeah.
how do we break that culture collectively? We've built it, so we can break it, right?
I hope so.
Solve the world's problems, Jeff. I'm gonna throw the chaos at you. You're the
I
engineer.
hope
You have
so.
to
It's
fix
fun.
it.
It's funny if you we're admitting shows that we watch. So my wife and I watch Acapulco on Apple TV,
Ooh.
and the main character in it is kind of telling the story back from, he's now rich and successful, but he's telling kind of the story of when he was a kid, how he got to this point. And he worked at this restaurant in Mexico, and he was talking to them about, hey, I found this other site, we could open up a second restaurant. And they're like, well, why? We're happy with one restaurant because it's more. And he's like, okay, let's say we did that, and then what would we, and then you could open up a third restaurant. Well, why would we do that? Because it's more.
That's what you do. Success, you seek
And
more.
the guy said to him, he's like, you work hard all the time. And he's like, oh, well, thank you. And he's like, that's not a compliment.
Ooh. Ooh,
Um,
I like that.
That this family was happy with they had lived in San Diego before and owned restaurants, and they moved back to Mexico because they didn't like the culture of more, and they were just happy with what they had. So it shows up all over the place, I think. And I'm not entirely sure how to fix that other than one person at a time, right?
Which takes us back to individual.
Yeah. And I think companies can lead that movement too. I'm sure there are great companies in the United States who, encourage their employees to live lives outside of work, but there are a lot that don't too.
I agree. Something I think is really interesting is companies that like encourage encourage you to do activities outside of work that still reflect positively on your employer. Not to diss these companies that are doing really great volunteer work out and about, but like asking your employees to give up their weekends to do a company thing like constantly.
Mhm.
Give them time to be human. Give people time to go home and cook an actual meal. Give them time to, if they want to sit on the couch for 12 hours and literally binge whatever they feel like binging, maybe that's what you need to recover.
Evidently, Emily in Paris or Acapulco is
Apparently,
what they should be
you
binging.
know. So going back to this like idea of loneliness and creating your social network, like obviously we haven't figured out in the last 5 minutes how to solve the collective burnout, which is we were working on that. One day we'll patent it and get it to all of you. Until then, how do we prevent loneliness? How do we, at the individual level, create that social support network that helps to reduce burnout? And as shout out to employers, if you have a strong social support network at work, you are more likely to show greater work satisfaction and productivity. So you're more likely to have these like 75 to 100% days than the 30 to 40% days if you are happy with people you work with, if you are supported, and you are less anxious at work. So how do we build those positive social relations that make us feel valued and supported and respected and secure?
Well, I think we first have to admit that we want that.
Yes.
That we don't want to live in isolation or alone. Um, we may need to seek out help, right? If we don't know where to look for that. When I was, in a position of running the office and being a principal, I didn't feel like I was getting great support from my company, so I went and found a group that included, people who were in similar leadership positions in different types of companies. So I sought out what I was looking for, and was able to find it in another group than necessarily through my company. So, I think it's super critical that we have a support team in place. Rhonda
Absolutely.
Britton, who I learned from, always says nobody can be fearless alone.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes, and it's
Rhonda has
very
a lot of
true.
gems.
Rhonda has a lot of great ones. Um, so that's how I would go about it. Is admit it, maybe ask for help, have some conversations with other people so you can see you're not alone, and then
Absolutely.
can you create something? Can you find something that solves the what you're missing?
I agree. So a comment that I get often is actually I get two. So the first one for proposal people is like go to SMPS, go to APMP, go to your local chapter, which is absolutely those are what they're for, is to find your people and to build that network. Those are great places to start. The second comment I get immediately after that is, but all of those people know who I work with. They like I can't be my honest self around them because if I, say you're having a problem with someone at work, sneeze. We love you, we hate you. If you're talking to someone about that difficult coworker, chances are at your local chapter, someone knows them. And so there's like that fear that it's going to get back to them. And then there's kind of this like tiptoeing around actually getting to the heart of the problem and not like trashing your coworkers. So the other thing I would say is to one, just be honest. You don't have to put someone down to say that you're having a problem with them, right? You can just say like, I am struggling to get my team to stay on schedule, or I'm struggling to feel supported at work, and this is what's happening. And it's okay to be honest within reason. Maybe you don't give specific names or throw anybody under the bus. And also, you can look outside of. And the wonderful thing that happened in the last 3 years is this increase in connectivity online, right? I get people from New York to California to London and Spain and Denmark who some of my best connections are from across the ocean and we talk about this stuff all the time. And it's really refreshing to talk to someone who has no idea what's going on in Albuquerque, doesn't know any of my local players. And I have no idea what's going on in Denmark. But to have these conversations, and it's okay. And you can find those in online communities and on LinkedIn, find and follow someone and strike up that relationship. It's just say hey.
Yeah,
Just
no,
say
I think that's great advice. It goes back to, are you able to have a difficult conversation with that person too? Because then it's not a hidden thing that you're talking about,
right.
which is not easy to do, but
No.
then maybe you can a little more openly discuss what's going on if the other person's aware of it too. And I think we see that if we don't get along with somebody, there's either something wrong with us or something wrong with them. And that's just not true. There are certain people we just don't get along with, and that's okay.
Well, again, we're human beings. We're complex. We have feelings, and we're not rational. We're not AIs and robots. Like sometimes your hackles go up for no reason. And like you said, not every personality meshes with other personalities. They can be a perfectly lovely person and you're not going to vibe with them. I'm a very prickly person, and so I don't vibe with a lot of people. So I feel that.
Yeah,
And
that's okay, right? Just
You can
knowing
still
that.
be civil and work together, right?
Yeah, of course. But I think we get into trouble when we, make it about us or we make it about them.
Right.
When really is we may just not mesh, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just have to figure out, what is it that's causing that mesh? Is it a personality disconnect? And how do you overcome it? Right.
Or do you want
Sometimes you can't. Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. There's lots of people I've worked with that I probably don't have much desire to work with again.
I have had to say goodbye to a couple of clients, and that's something I never really thought I'd do. Not because they were bad clients by any means. It was just our working styles just didn't align, and they were perfectly great and successful in their in their lane, and I was swimming over here. And so we just said, you know what? Good luck, have fun, best of everything to you, and that's totally fine. Totally fine.
Yeah, I think, I hate to go back to the well again, but we've talked about this before. But one of the things Rhonda always says is, especially when it comes to community, is no matter what you do, a third of the people aren't going to like you, a third of the people aren't going to care, and the rest are our people. And we put a lot of energy and effort into trying to convince the other 2/3 that they should like us, instead of just finding our community and giving them our all.
And that's the theme of today, is finding those third. You don't have to give up on the other 2/3, but you need to give up on the idea that you're eventually going to win them over, because that's not what you need. You need that 30% of people who are going to support you at your 100% days or your 40% days or your 0% days. Like you need those people. And that's all you need. I would rather have 2 really great, awesome connections than 50 meh connections who aren't really going to be there when I have a bad day,
Yes. To quote DMX, the people who will ride or die with you.
Yes. Go find your ride or dies. So to go back to a big picture, solving burnout on a corporate level, perhaps is the way to say that, not the individual scale. What are some things that we can encourage employers to do? The first one that comes to my mind is this idea of promoting cultures of inclusion and empathy, particularly, recognizing that your employees are people and not cogs in a machine or little productivity robots churning out reports or papers or projects for you, but they are human beings with feelings and needs, and they're not always going to be level. But
yeah, to me, I think if you can create an open and honest environment, which again is easy to say, People give a lot of reasons why they leave jobs. It's typically not the reason why they're leaving the job.
Right.
Yes, they got more money. Yes, there's a different opportunity, but the reality is there's some issue going on that they don't think is going to change and they don't want to deal with it anymore.
Right.
But if they feel safe to say, hey, this is the issue I'm dealing with, are you going to save every person? Probably not. And do you have to give in to every person? No, you don't. But having the conversation, if you could save 25% of the people from burnout or from leaving, that's a huge thing. A
Yeah.
lot of dollars.
Yes. Especially when burnout costs like billions a
Yeah.
year.
So I mean, as leaders, right, we have to be aware that if somebody doesn't get along with us, that's not personal. If they want to go work somebody else, that's not personal. And as employees, it goes the other way too, right? We got to be able to have more open conversations about what's happening.
Exactly. I absolutely agree with that. I also think that we get so stuck, and maybe this is an American culture thing, but we get so stuck in the doing that we forget to celebrate the getting it done.
Uh-huh.
So proposal people also like we often get cut out of the celebratory wins, right? Like the sales team, the technical team win the project. They're like, yes, they'll throw a big party or have drinks or whatever. Sometimes they forget to invite the proposal team, which is frustrating. But even outside of that, just celebrating getting that proposal in or getting that project done or turning in your like 60% design. I'm sure like those are big emotional roller coasters where you've just gotten up to the top and you turn it in and you're going to plunge. Like, can we celebrate having done that? Like it just because it's your daily job doesn't mean you can't celebrate. And I think that's an opportunity to connect with the people around you is to celebrate their successes, even if those are as minor as you did your job.
One of the bosses that I've had that I've tried to model myself after a lot would celebrate every deliverable, and it included going out to lunch, rest, right? So we're taking a break from this. We're going out to lunch as a team. We're just going to talk. We're not going to talk about the project. We're going to have a good time. Thank you for all your hard work. And he would do that every single time we delivered something. And I still reflect back on that many years later as a really cool thing that he did.
That's amazing. And I think that more companies can adopt that. Like, and
Yeah.
maybe you can't afford to take your whole team out to lunch every time. I get that before you
It was
come at
three of
me.
us, but still.
You can do other little things. Like you said, time is valuable. Give everybody like, like let them go home early on Friday or the next day, like come in late,
Yeah.
balance that out or some sort of reward, some sort of celebration of doing a good job. Just because it's your job doesn't mean we can't celebrate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other thoughts on loneliness or burnout or isolation?
No, I mean, I guess I would just say, however lonely you feel, you're not alone. We're here to support you.
Can we
Um,
put that on a
there,
mug?
there are lots.
That's like an
I'm sure it
inspirational
already exists on
quote.
them.
A little kitten like hanging from the branch that says hang in there. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that ranks up with that.
yeah.
Not to diminish it, it's very important, but it's cutesy.
So just reach out. You don't have to go
Yeah.
through.
No, you don't have to go through it alone. You can hit us up on LinkedIn to share your thoughts on building a supportive network, or if you're struggling to find one, struggling to build one, you can also email us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com.
And now it's time for burning questions.
So today's question is one that we haven't gotten yet. It just fresh in my inbox this morning, actually.
What
Yes,
great
fresh in my
timing.
inbox this morning. I know, right? Thank you. I can't say who you are because of confidentiality, but thank you for submitting your question. So this person asks or says, I don't think I have much leverage because I'm so young. I have 3 years of experience. What can I do to own the process and control the work that I am responsible for?
It's a great question.
Yeah, we often get, I'm having pushback and I don't know how to own the process, but this is a really unique one in that it comes from a place of feeling junior. So, Jeff, do you want to field this one initially? I think I'd normally jump in and I want to give you time on this one.
Well, so I think the first thing I would look at is don't minimize your lack of experience. I don't even know if I want to call it a lack of experience, because 3 years is a while.
Yeah.
We can look at that and say, I don't have much experience, and so people aren't going to listen to me. Or we can look at that as, I'm not ingrained in the system. I can look at this from a fresh perspective, and maybe there's something unique I can bring to the table that other people may not have thought of.
Yes. I often like to bash the comment that this is how we've always done it. That's like the fastest way to kill an organization, right? You are in a prime position to look at how things have always been done and offer insights into changing them, just like Jeff said. I think that's a great way to position yourself. I also think that it's really important to look at your experience as yours and own it. So, for example, I don't know anything about engineering, right? But I have 15 years of proposal experience. So it doesn't really matter if an engineer comes to me and says, well, I've been working on proposals for 15 years too. I specialize in them. So your 3 years of experience, if you are specializing in whatever you're specializing in, if it is all in marketing, if it is all in proposals, if it is all in engineering, it is expertise that you have crafted, that you have honed, that you have practiced for those 3 years. And you can't really compare it to someone else who's either doing it on the side or is not as focused on it. So that's another thing to think about. If you're struggling with a technical team member or a proposal team member, whichever way it goes, just remember that your experience is different. And so it doesn't have to be significant. You don't have to have decades of experience because it's different. It's a fresh perspective, like Jeff just said.
Yeah, and the other thing I would point out, as much as we like to gripe about the different generations,
Yes.
Each generation that is entering the workforce brings a unique skill set that they've developed based on what they grew up in. And that unique skill set can apply to things that have been done the same way for a while and completely revolutionize them. So there's probably a lot of things that you might bring to the table that other people wouldn't even think of because they don't have that experience growing up that you do.
Yeah, you want to find the fastest way to communicate something, ask Gen Z to cut down a paragraph for you.
Yeah.
It is eye-opening how quickly they will just like take a knife to your carefully crafted technical narrative and just really get to the heart of it because they don't have time for that. That's not how they communicate anymore. They don't even have time for email.
And they turn it into an abbreviation, right?
Yes. And they don't even have emojis anymore. I'm like, how do you communicate? What is this?
What's an emoji?
Oh no. Oh no, are we in different generations?
Oh, we are. Yes.
Oops.
So I guess the other part of this that I would speak to is you can't control anything beyond yourself.
Right.
Right. So I would focus on how you want to be and how you want to show up every day and, own the process. But you may not be in control of whether things change or, what influence you're able to have over others. So, focus on what's going to make you feel good at the end of the day and how you want to go about work. And, the rest is, we don't really have any control over.
Exactly. And the fastest way to shut down someone who's telling you to do it a different way, maybe it's inefficient, just ask them why. If you want to do it one way and they want to do it another, just ask them why. And then you can have a discussion about it. Theme of the episode, being honest.
Yeah, explain to me.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn your perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that's what I would say about that question is don't minimize yourself and control what you can control, which is you.
Absolutely. Own your experience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for submitting that question. You know who you are. I hope you're listening. If you have a burning question that you would like Jeff and I to answer, we anonymize the heck out of it. Obviously, we'd share no names, no roles, no titles, no nothing. You can send those questions to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com.
Thanks everybody for listening.